This podcast is not safe for work and will feature movie spoilers. It will feature scenes described of a graphic nature. It will contain language which most listeners may find offensive. Welcome to the podcast Under the Stairs. Hi everyone and welcome to the podcast Under the Stairs. I'm your host Duncan McLeish. Welcome to the show. Up on this episode, it's the third and for the time being final bonus episode covering a brand new title released by Studio Canal on the kind of unsung heroes of Hammer films in the early 70s. And this episode we're taking a look at Demons of the Mind, which will make its way to 4K UHD, Special Edition Blu-ray in April the 6th. It comes out the same time as Blood of the Mummy's Tomb, which we spoke about just a couple of days ago. So if you've checked out that, you are eagerly anticipating the review of this one, a movie that I hadn't seen before it was sent through. A huge thanks, as always, to Fetch PR, who furnished me with copies of these for review, which I'm going to say has been a really rewarding time, because at the moment, and you've started to hear the review of this one, they haven't given me a movie that I have disliked, and of these movies, most of them have been first-time watches. So, yeah, Hammer, I think I've spoken about this before, let's just tread some ground we've already done. Hammer horror, grew up with it, love it, got several box sets with the usual classics, the Christopher Lee in many different guises, the Peter Cushing trying to foil him, and the kind of powerhouse performances and stories that you expect from arguably one of the most important film studios in British horror history. However, in the 70s, and we're going to touch on this a lot during our review, in the 70s the studio itself was struggling because that was seen as old horror cinema, and the 70s had given way, specifically in America, to this whole host. You take into account this movie comes out the same year as Last House on the Left, right? So, like, the times they are a-changing, dear listener. We're in a position where America is kind of I'll let you even go one step further. They come out the same year as The Wicker Man. So, like, the idea of supernatural horror against real human impact and human terror is at war with each other. And as a result, cinema in the 70s gets dangerous. And the reason it gets dangerous is because people have lived through danger. So they've seen how horrible the real world is. And Hammer Studios was really struggling how to articulate that in the movies they were doing, where it could maintain the interest from their audiences. So you get a ton of different things: psychological horror, more grounded horror, but then you get titles like the Blood of the Mummy's Tomb, which we spoke about in the previous episode, which is just a riff on the mummy movies that Hammer had been making to that time. But then you get this kind of really ambitious and quite unique title in Demons of the Mind. So on this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to do an unboxing for you, so you can see what's in the box. And then once we've done that, we'll kick into a little bit of my views on the movie, a little bit of commentary on it, before we talk about some of the special features that you can find on this release. And then we'll bring it home with a nice old score. So strap yourselves in. The unboxing's coming right up, right after this. And let's do an unboxing of Demons of the Mind. Like the previous sets, this one has a kind of reinforced cardboard slip. All the special features listed on the back. Inside the box, you have this kind of slip that holds both in my case, the Ultra kind of 4K UHD and the Blu-ray. You have two posters in lovely poster paper. The first one is the alternative art for Demons of the Mind. And then you also, which is really cool with these sets, you get a separate poster. And in the second poster, you get what was the original poster artwork. And I'm going to be honest, I prefer the original. That to me is more kind of reminiscent of the movie than the new poster artwork. Then we have the booklet. The booklet is awesome. It's kind of essays written in here. A bit of information and blurb on different actors that was in there. In the case of this one, the original press kit. You also get some writings from different scholarly people about the impact of the movie and the making of it. So yeah, worth checking out inside the box. There are Hammer films that everyone talks about, and then there are the ones that quietly sit in the shadows waiting to be rediscovered. Demons of the Mind is firmly in that second category. Released in 1972, at a time when Hammer Film Productions was struggling to maintain its dominance in a rapidly changing horror landscape, this is a film that didn't quite land with audiences or critics on release. It was often dismissed, shuffled onto double bills, or overshadowed by the studio's more iconic titles. But over time, something interesting has happened. A growing number of fans and critics have started to see the film for what it is. One of Hammer's most ambitious and arguably most understood films. Directed by Peter Sykes and written by Christopher Wicking, Demons of the Mind takes the gothic framework Hammer was known for and pushes it into a far more uncomfortable psychological territory. This isn't about monsters or curses in the traditional sense, it's about repression, inherited trauma and the terrifying consequences of control. The story centres on Baron Zorn, played by the intense conviction of Robin Hardy, a man obsessed with the idea that madness runs in his bloodline. Convinced his children are doomed, he imprisons them, isolates them and attempts to quote-unquote cure them through increasingly disturbing means. And this is where the film's ambition really starts to show. Because instead of presenting madness as something external, something to be fought or defeated, the film turns inwards. It becomes a study of psychological decay, of what happens when fear itself becomes the driving force behind cruelty. There's a clear influence here from European art cinema and folk horror, rather than just the traditional Hammer playbook. Visually, the film leans into that ambition. Shot by Arthur Grant, it's filmed with striking, almost dreamlike imagery, misty landscapes, decaying interiors, and a constant sense of unease. It's not just gothic for the sake of it. It's expressive, reflecting the fractured mental state of its characters. But what really elevates Demons of the Mind and why it's gained the cult appreciation it has is the performances. Robert Hardy is extraordinary here. His Baron Zorn isn't a straightforward villain. He's a man consumed by fear, conviction, and what he is doing is the right thing as he commits acts of emotional and psychological violence. It's a layered, unsettling performance that anchors the entire film. Then there's Shane Briant and Gillian as the tortured siblings. The performance carries a raw, almost chaotic energy, unpredictable, volatile, and deeply uncomfortable to watch at times. There's sense that their characters are both victims and something else entirely, shaped by the environment they've been trapped in. And when Patrick Magee enters the film, things take an even darker turn. Magee brings that unmistakable intensity. Fans of A Clockwork Orange will recognise it immediately, and his presence adds a layer of menace that pushes the film further into psychological horror. So why was it overlooked? Part of it comes down to its timing. By the early 70s, horror audiences were moving towards something more explicit, more visceral. Hammer's brand of gothic storytelling was starting to feel dated, and Demons of the Mind, with its slower pace, its ambiguity, and its focus on internal horror, didn't fit neatly into what audiences expected. It was too strange to be mainstream, it's too rooted in gothic tradition to feel entirely modern, but that's exactly what resonates now. Because what once felt like a weakness now feels like a strength. The film's ambition, its willingness to explore taboo themes, to blur the lines between sanity and madness, to prioritise mood and psychology over plot, gives it a unique place in Hammer's catalogue. It's not a perfect film. There are moments where the pacing falters, where the ideas feel just out of reach, but even those imperfections are part of its character. This is a film reaching for something bigger than itself, and that is always compelling. And now with this new 4K Dolby Vision restoration, it's finally got a presentation that matches that ambition. The visuals, already one of the film's strongest elements, are given new life here. Those rich textures, those shadowy interiors, those almost paint-like use of colour, all come through with clarity and depth. It allows modern audiences to fully appreciate just how visually striking this film is. The collector's edition also digs into the film's legacy, offering context that helps its reframing not only as just a misstep, but as a bold experiment that didn't quite find its audiences at the time. So where does Demons of the Mind sit today? Not as a forgotten failure, but as a cult favourite. A film that may have been underappreciated on release, but has quietly built up a following amongst those who value ambition over perfection. It's Hammer at its most daring, its most uncomfortable, and, for many, its most fascinating. And now, finally, it's getting that recognition it deserves. So yeah, Demons of the Mind, first time watch, and I really liked this movie. Like I mentioned, I think one of the strongest elements in this movie is the fact that it has that kind of... European art house cinema is probably the best way I can liken it, but it's kind of late 60s, early 70s classic Italian cinema here. The kind of dreamlike cinematography is just it's chef's kiss, and the print is phenomenal here. Studio Canal have clearly pulled out all the stops. It helps that Hammer horror films were always really well shot anyway, and the attention to foreground and background was something conscious in the shots. Like, that studio in general is one of the few studios that has really benefited from our push towards 4K, because you get a real feel of how vibrant things were on set and the ambition that the DPs had at the time when shooting for the directors. So you get that coming through, but the performances here are just absolutely incredible. They're so close to being over the top and like stage theatrical, but that line is so well measured throughout the entire movie. It just landed with me really, really well. Like I mentioned in the previous segment, I think there are bits where the film's aiming for something that's just a little bit out of reach of its storytelling, and as a result, some of those ideas feel a bit ponderous to get to, but not in an off-putting way. The runtime of this movie isn't particularly long, so those moments don't languish in any way where I felt the need to pick up my phone or check the time code on the movie to see where I was at and how long I had left. It lands it with a degree of charm, and I imagine like a panicking studio at the time being like, maybe this movie? ? We don't know. Something's got to connect with audiences. And you see like what comes after this from like 72 to quasi 76, 77 as being like, let's just throw things against the wall and see what sticks. And Demons of the Mind kind of feels like that. One of the last titles where the authenticity and the credentials of traditional Hammer horror are trying to somehow merge with ideas that the studio hadn't really an inkling of how to deal with, and bring in cinematography, score, and like almost those folk elements I mentioned before. This movie comes out the same year as Wicker Man, but we've already been through movies like Blood and Satan's Claw, Witchfinder General. So, like, it's like trying to navigate through all that, and it lands a lot more than it misses for me. I would say like 95% of this movie completely worked. Another 5%, I appreciate how hard they were swinging to hit their target, even if they don't quite match it. In terms of the special features here, you have new Evil and Blood, Virginia Weatherfield on Demons of the Mind, an audio commentary with author and film historian Steve Haberman. He was on the Blood of the Mummy's Tomb one as well. So once again, I explain this, I tend to, on my first watch, in moments where there's a lot of cinematography scenes, maybe not a lot of dialogue, or where characters just are interacting in a way where I feel like the story isn't moving along at pace, I'll switch on the commentary, divvy between whatever commentaries are there, just to get a feel of what's being said. And I really like his mind, actually. He's got a lot to say. There's an audio commentary here by Peter Sykes and the screenwriter Christopher Wicking, the actress Virginia Weatherhall, and it's moderated by film historian Jonathan Southcott. There is Blood Will Have Blood, inside Demons of the Mind featurette. You also have an interview with the camera operator Neil Binney. He's on the previous one as well. And a look behind with some stills gallery, colour library card gallery, and trailers as you would expect from a release like this. So once again, I'm going to just say, like, it's unlikely you're going to get a better version of this movie. I just don't think physical media is going to go that way. I don't think we're going to get 8Ks of Hammer titles. This is probably the best you're going to get. And I would wage this is probably a blank spot in most of my audience's knowledge. I don't know how many people have seen this movie, mostly because I hadn't seen this movie. So if you're listening to this because we have a similar film taste and have watched similar movies, there's a good chance that, you know, this one is a blind spot for you. It's one I would highly recommend. I really, really enjoyed this one. I mean, it should surprise no one. Massive fan of European horror cinema from in or around the same time. So the fact it scratches that itch for me, both a British bent, kind of makes it land in a strong position for me overall. But yeah, gorgeous to look at. Really, 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 really well acted. And a really cool story. So not much more I can say about this one. I would give this one a 4.5 out of 5. I really, really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it. So it has a street date of the 6th of April. And it's available in 4K, 4K UHD. Like I showed before, the Blu-ray comes with both of those packages. This is the collector's edition. 2 nice posters, a booklet, all that goodness. And it's available for you to buy right now. So there we go. And with that, I think we'll close out the show. And you've been listening to the podcast Under the Stairs. This has been a bonus episode review of Demons of the Mind. A huge thanks to Studio Canal and Fetch PR for sending me out a review copy to do. And I think that's the last one we have for a while. There's a couple that are coming out that I put my name down for, so hopefully they'll come through. They're a bit more modern and a lot less Hammer. But yeah, keep your eye on this space as and when I get stuff that I can review. The physical unboxing on a video review, they'll be coming your way. In terms of podcasts Under the Stairs, next episode will be dropping tomorrow of this date. I think this one's coming out on Saturday. The one that'll be dropping tomorrow is the next installment of our 88 films slasher classic collection. Looking across here to the pile that I have, I think the next one we are doing is... Let's see, where are we? Is it? It is indeed. It's Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. There you go, right there for you. That's the next one we're doing. So we'll be on that one tomorrow. I'm going to watch that tonight, and the review will be dropping then. And then we will be doing a Mortuary Assistant sometime mid next week, which is a brand new title, and I think the first 2026 horror release I'm talking about this year, so it'll be worth checking out. All that's left for me to say is thank you very much for checking out this review. Wherever you're checking it out, if it's on YouTube, ding the bell and make sure you're subscribed, that way you never miss anything that we're releasing. If it's on Spotify or any of the podcatchers, make sure you're subscribed there as well. It helps me. And yeah, until the next time, wherever you are, whatever the time zone is and whatever you're up to in this big bad world of ours, please take care of yourselves out there. This is Duncan McLeish broadcasting live from Under the Stairs, and I'll speak to you next time.